I want to welcome Mr. Neil Basarich to our podcast today. My name is James Mitchell, and I'm a retired police officer and the author of the book, A Badge Well Worn. This book discussed many of the activities I had during my career as a police officer. One of the activities, ironically, involved Neil, who in the book is depicted as Lenny, which is kind of appropriate. Neil was a drug dealer in Northwest Indiana, and actually a quite prolific drug dealer. He sold drugs to customers in Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio, and possibly other states that we haven't learned about yet. But Neil and I have become friends over the years. Even though I worked a case on him, and I'll let him explain a little bit more his motivation, but he has never really held a grudge or felt any animosity towards me, and I'll let him explain that. Neil, why don't you tell me, from your own point of view, how we met, what you were doing around that time in your life? You were just a young man, 20 years old. Tell us a little bit about the background of what you were doing around that time.
Well, I had worked at the steel mill and it just wasn't my thing. And I met somebody and they had turned me on to the meth and I liked it. He had it and asked me if I wanted to get rid of some of it for him. So I started doing that and then we ended up being partners in it. And it was off to the ballpark after that.
So you
Start
guys, you were working in a steel mill, and one of your associates, or I don't know, school buddies or whatever, resident neighbor, got you interested in selling methamphetamine.
No, what it was is I had been turned on to the pill speed at the steel mill. And after I left the steel mill, I continued doing it. And then I was introduced to a guy that had meth, and I had never done it. And he turned me on to that, and then it went from there. He was just gotten out of the military, and I had seen him before in town driving a brand new Trans Am. And I always used to say, "Whoa, that was a nice car." And then he came up to me one night at a drive-in called the Box of Chicken back then, and we just started on from there. He turned me on to it. I liked it, and like I said, I was off to the game.
So you were just a user at first,
Yes.
and then you found what were you selling just to support what you used, or how did that grow into?
Well, it started like that, and then I saw the money that I could make, and he said that I was making more than him, and did I want to go in partners with him? And I said, sure, because I didn't have to go get it. It was, he took care of all that. And so we just started doing it like that. He'd get it and I'd get rid of it. And then he started taking me with him to the people that he was getting rid of it to. And I met them. And it was just over and over the same thing.
You worked your way up. I don't know how over what period of time it took, but you were buying up to 20 pounds, at minimum of 20 pounds at a time from your supplier. That's a lot of crystal meth when you
Yes,
break
it
it down.
was. It was a lot, but it went fast.
You're a very successful entrepreneur.
I don't know about successful because it got me in nothing but trouble.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You had kind of a bad reputation in the area you lived for being pretty much a notorious guy for your activities. I guess some of it drug activities, some of it you making some bombs occasionally, and you got to be quite a known person in your neighborhood. Is that accurate?
Yes, you are. You're accurate 100%.
Well, tell me about the bomb incident when you were.
Well, there was train tracks behind my parents' house, and I was up on there one day on the tracks, and there was a box of these little red squares with lead straps on them that said danger on them. So I asked around about them and found out that they were warning devices that they put on the tracks. If the train ran over it, it would explode. And if, say, 3 explosions meant there was a train in distress up ahead, they were to stop. And I was told that if something hit them hard, they would explode. So, of course, Neil has to try it out. I got a shot put from school and threw one on it. It exploded. So I started taking the powder out of them and putting them in galvanized pipe and making little bombs out of them. And one went off on me. I was at my uncle's house, and my cousin threw a football, and it went into the garage, hit a hammer that was on the workbench, and I was getting ready to pick it up. The hammer come down, went off on it, blew off my 2 fingers. Piece went through my neck, out my back, and that
How old
was.
were you?
I was 17.
17. Did you get in any trouble?
No, not really.
Okay.
I was in the hospital for, I think, 20 something days, and that was the extent of it.
That helped your reputation in the neighborhood, though, didn't it?
I don't know if you want to call it a reputation, but they knew Neil made bombs.
We talked about some of the things we wanted to cover with you. Uh, there came a time where you and I crossed our paths, and I ordered up some crystal meth from you, and I was working undercover. I had been assigned as a police officer to an undercover unit specializing in Lake County, Indiana, and your name had come up from the local narcotics unit of being potentially a dealer, substantial dealer, I might add, in the area. So you became kind of a target. Ultimately, we were able to get an introduction to you through your sister and purchase some methamphetamine, which she delivered. And then later on, the indictments came down through federal court and you got charged. And so that's kind of how you and I connected in terms of professionally. You went, let's pick it up from there. You went to court and you want to tell me what happened?
Well, I had been arrested for another charge from Bloomington, Indiana. My partner's brother took down a big load down to Bloomington and for some reason had mentioned my name on the phone. And so they got me for conspiracy to distribute drugs. And I really had nothing to do with that. That was between him and his brother. But my name was mentioned, so I was on the indictment. Went through all that and went in front of a judge called Hugh Dillon, which was notorious down there for the segregation and that. And he gave me a Zip 6, they called it, anywhere from 6 months to 6 years. And then when I was convicted on that, they come up with one that had occurred the same night my sister had the meth to you. And that was my partner wanted me to go up there. I didn't want to go up there to Chicago, but I went with him and got busted up there. And that was the judge up there was Judge Julius Hoffman, the hanging judge. And my attorney had told me, he says, just hope we don't get Julius Hoffman out of the 25 circuit judges. And of course I got him. But I was lucky because he had a big car theft ring to take to trial, and it had to be done within the next couple days. So he said that if I pleaded guilty, that he would give me the same sentence Hugh Dillon gave me because they were friends, to run concurrent. So I accepted it. And then the third one was for yours in Hammond. And judge gave me the zip 6-2 to run concurrent. So altogether it was 18 years. And then I did just what I did. And I took advantage of it, though. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I'd have probably been dead by now.
You were what when you got sentenced? How old were you?
Just turned 20.
20 years old.
Yeah.
So you went to where did you go to prison for initially?
Ashland, Kentucky.
And how long were you down there?
Well, I was down there for, I can't really remember how long, but they had sent my partner's brother there, the one that turned government witness on me in court. And I started showing around the news clipping that he was the one that turned government witness on me. So they kind of politely asked me, did I want to transfer? And I said, yeah, I'd like to go to Milan. And they told me that that was for a lot older people. And I said, well, I'd rather do my time with older than the younger, because the younger, all it was like a gladiator school. They were looking for their street credit when they got out. And I didn't want that. I just wanted to get over and done with it and get back to my life. So I just took every advantage of everything that they offered me in there. The carpentry apprenticeship. I went to school for a while in there and did my time and got out, and stayed in Gary for a while, but wanted out of there. And my biological father lived in Florida, ex-Marine, offered me a job down here. So I came down here, and I've been down here ever since.
You pretty much stayed clean since you got out of prison. And I say pretty much, but tell me about that. What changed your whole thoughts about drugs?
Being locked up had a lot to do with it, but I just didn't really care for it anymore. I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't do any after I got out, but they have a saying called weekend warrior. And I was a weekend warrior. If I wanted to do a drug or something, I did it on the weekend because I've always had a job. I looked at it this way: if you want to play, you got to pay.
So you decided to stay away from drugs at some point altogether.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I'm very down on them. I have a son and a daughter that have messed up, but trying to get their life together now. And I wasn't in their life for a long time.
Looking back on it now, what drew you into that, other than just the using it and easy money? After selling it, you found yourself making a lot of money, a lot more than you could ever make working at a regular job, at least for a while.
I don't think I looked at it that way.
Okay.
It was fun. It was fun. And be honest with you, I thought it was going to last forever. And most of your drug dealers do think that this is going to last forever. And a lot of them go to prison, come out and do the same thing again.
So you got out and you went to live with your biological father in Florida, who was a retired Marine Corps captain.
Yes.
And he was a real hard guy, a hard ass. so to
Yes,
speak.
he was. Yes, he
Tell me
was.
about that.
Well, I hadn't seen him from the age of 8 until I was 25. And when I met him, again, I was scared of him. I was scared of him. And this was a chance for me to start over. And so I did what he told me to do, and it saved my life. It saved my life. Now, my stepfather, the one that adopted us, he was the greatest man in the world. He did everything. He never come down on me for anything. He just told me that there were consequences for things that you do. And I had the consequences. I couldn't stay in Gary anymore because I saw myself falling right back into the same crowd of people that I was running around with before, and I didn't want that anymore. So when the chance came for me to get out of there, I took advantage of it and I left.
You had told me a little bit about your experiences with your biological father in Florida. Apparently, he was a pretty tough taskmaster. Get you up at 0500 hours with the Marine Corps. Him. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about him.
He had gone into the military when he was 16 years old. He left home. His father was an alcoholic. His mother was an alcoholic. He had, I don't know how many brothers and sisters. And he was hard nosed. I mean, you never knew what condition he was going to be in when you talked to him. And he was he was good for me. That's what I can say. He was very good for me. He I am what I am today, and I contribute that to the Marine.
You got a lot of respect for him, and I think you earned his respect at some point because you've turned your life around and you've made a success out of yourself after making a lot of mistakes early on in your life. But I'm a personal witness that you've accomplished a lot of good things in the last portion of your life, and quite frankly, I'm proud to know you. But tell me a story real quick. You kind of surprised me one day when I was still working as a police officer. You got out of prison and you bounced into the police station one day to, and asked to speak to me, and you came into my office and told me a story, and it's in the book. I put it in the book, as you know. I gave you a copy of the book, but tell tell the audience what happened that one night when I was working undercover and came over to your apartment.
I was really so high that night that you guys came over that I was paranoid. I was didn't know if you were there to rip me off or what, because I had a lot of meth in the refrigerator, something like about 20 keys in there. And I kind of just wanted you guys out of there. And even though I didn't know who you were, except the guys that my sister had introduced me to, and I really hadn't been around you that much. And I sat at the table, and I always kept something up underneath the table to protect myself. And I was getting to really paranoid that night. And I was saying to myself, I don't know what I should do here. Should I just shoot underneath the table or what? And then I just said, nah, I better not. And kind of asked you politely to leave. And you guys left, and that was it.
So you were right on the edge of taking me out that night.
In a sense, yes. In a sense, yes.
Well, Thank you for not doing that, by the way. But Neil, you've led a very interesting life, and it's ironic that we end up 30 miles apart down in South Florida after all these years, and stayed in touch over the years ever since you stopped by the police station to talk to me and told me about. Literally, you kind of saved my life too. So,
No, I look at all the busts that I had, the three of them, and it saved my life. Because as bad as I was on the meth, I would have been dead by now.
well, all of your associates are gone now,
Oh
the
yeah.
guys you ran with, and probably plenty of your customers, former customers, are gone. You're still hanging in there. So, what do we tell kids? What do you tell your kid, or what do you tell your grandkids about using drugs?
Or you could talk until you're red in the face. They're not going to listen unless they themselves want to stop. And I've always said that, and I even tell my son and my daughter that unless you yourself want to stop doing drugs, all the rehabs in the world are going to do nothing for anybody unless they themselves want to stop. It's been a hard road for me because it's hard when your children know about your past and you try to tell them not to do something and you sometimes get thrown in your face, well, you did it. And I tell them, look where it got me.
Yeah.
And they don't listen unless they want to. Like I said, unless you yourself want to stop, no rehab in the world is going to do anything for you.
What do you? One of the things that I've often pondered is, what was your life like as a drug dealer? What were your fears? What were your concerns? Do, did you Were you concerned about some of the people you dealt with, because there's a lot of criminal element that
Oh yeah.
take advantage
Oh
of
yeah.
you?
You never knew what to expect when you went to do a deal. You never knew what to expect. You could walk into a ripoff. You could walk into being shot and just take your drugs. And that's why most of the people that I dealt with were professional people. They didn't want any problem. They didn't want any problem. They just wanted to do this and get away. That's all.
So a lot of your clientele were upper middle class, uh,
Upper.
upper class.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. You're talking about professional people, maybe
Yes.
attorneys,
Club owners,
club owners, businessmen.
strip club owners,
What do they
just,
do? Provide it to the girls?
oh, I guess, that's
Yeah,
how they kept them awake and stuff like that.
interesting. So, did you ever get anybody ever try to rob you in a drug deal?
A couple times, but we always carried backup with us that they didn't know that we're out there.
So you
So if
had.
something happened, they were there to handle it.
Well, I do remember one time when I was talking to, I believe it was, I'm not sure if it was your sister or another lady. We were trying to get kind of arrange a deal to buy some drugs from you. And we were in a car, we were driving down Lake Street, and the lady said, if you guys are narcs, I just need to warn you. We were in the car, and the one of the ladies said, "There's a you better not be trying to rip us off, because there's a guy right behind us, and he's got a gun, and the first person he's going to shoot is you." And I'm wondering if that was you behind us in that deal. I don't know. You probably don't remember.
I don't remember that at all.
I understand that, even as a police officer, one of the things that I was always concerned about was when you are transacting a drug deal, one person's got money and the other person's got drugs. Sometimes the other person doesn't have drugs and they just want your money. And they're trying to set you up to take your money. So there's always a danger, not so much of getting killed because somebody finds out you're a cop, but it's more likely that you're going to get shot because you got money.
Yeah, that is a possibility. But like I said, the people that I was usually dealing with didn't want any problems. They just wanted the product and for me to get out of there.
You've covered a lot here. Is there anything you'd like to add? You got any hard feelings about me?
None whatsoever. I was very excited to meet you after all those years. You had got in touch with me, I think almost 14 years ago, just before I went up for my 40th class reunion, and said that you would contact me. You were going out of town or something. And what I had thought, and you had discussed this with your wife or something, and she says, I don't want no criminal here.
No, but sometimes life gets in the way of what
Sure.
your best ideas and your plans. I'm glad we've reconnected, and I really appreciate. Hopefully, some of the things that you're saying now is going to hit home with some people, someone, somewhere, and it'll turn their life around like your life got turned around. Because I think from what I've encountered during my life as a police officer, drugs is a terrible curse on our society, and it hurts a lot of people. It not only hurts the person that's taking the drugs, but it hurts everyone around them as well.
It affects the parents a lot because I know what it did to my mom. It really, and I had a wonderful childhood. Everything I did was on my own. Nothing, I didn't have a bad childhood. I wasn't beaten when I was a child or anything like that. It was all my decision what I did.
Well,
And you met my parents. In fact, you met my parents.
I did. Andrea, your sister, introduced me to him, and I believe her words were something to the effect of, "Well, you arrested me. Now you're going to have to meet my mom and my dad, and they're going to tell you I'm not as bad a person as you think I am," or words to that effect. But Andrea is a unusual person. She is, and like you, she's never really held a grudge against me anyway. I think she holds one against you a little bit, but it's kind of in fun, just so she can have a little power over you, maybe, because you had her deliver the drugs, which got her arrested.
She got paid for it.
Yeah, she
and
did.
She introduced me to you.
That's all true. You're settled down and living in kind of retirement, semi-retirement. You've been a successful craftsman most of your adult life.
I have 2 children, yes, son and a daughter, and their mother had passed away of cancer. And it was funny because I was running buck wild to the clubs every night, working every day, going out to the clubs, and all of a sudden she passes away. And I have 2 children. And that's one of the main reasons I settled down like I did fully. I took custody of my 2 children. Her family had tried to take them away from me, said I wasn't stable enough. But within a month and a half of having them, I bought a house and raised them until they left the house.
Well, you are a shining example of somebody who's turned their life around, and for the good, I might add. And I'm proud to call you a friend. And
Same here.
And I really appreciate
excited. I was excited when my sister had called me and said, Jim Mitchell got a hold of me and would like to meet you. And I said, oh, great. Because like I said, I talked to you like 15 years ago and you kind of like disappeared. And like I said, I thought maybe your wife had said, I don't want you to meet him.
Well, I'm glad you did. We may do this again if you don't mind. Maybe at
No, I
some
don't
point
mind
we
at
have
all.
another talk, and we're going to
I
probably.
have nothing to hide.
I
I
know
have
you
nothing.
don't. You're brutally honest, and I appreciate that. I think that comes through when you talk to people too. Let me just ask you something interesting that my wife and I discussed, and you and as well with you. When your experience with drugs, you can walk into a situation. I know I had the same thing happen to me when I worked undercover. I could see things that were going on that other people didn't see, and I knew what was happening because I had lived with it for years. And so you had to have the same kind of awareness of what was going on around you when you go out, even to this day. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because it's hard to explain to people who've never been in that environment.
I can talk to somebody for 5 minutes and I can tell whether I'm going to ever talk to them again or want anything to do with them or what they're up to. Just like, for example, uh, I was doing some work somewhere and the guy I was working for had a company and he introduced me to someone that had just started working for him. Well, these guys were good old boys. You know, the jeans, nice shirt, cowboy boots, and that. And here he comes up in this black pinstripe suit with the cufflinks and everything. And when he looked at me when I was introduced to him, I was in work clothes. I was fixing something in the building for him. And he kind of looked at me, looked me up and down and said, hey. And I told the guy I was working for, I said, you better watch this guy. He says, what do you mean, Neil? I said, you just better watch this guy. And then I ended up calling him Slick Dick Willie. And he ended up ripping off the company.
So
Wouldn't listen,
you got to,
they wouldn't listen to me. I'm just, you know, a carpenter. Why would he listen to me? But he ended up ripping off the company and the company shut down after about 25 years in business.
I know we talked about drugs and stuff. You can recognize a dealer when you see them
Mm-hmm.
in a public place. You kind of know by mannerisms and by activity around. You have a situational awareness, as we used to call it in the Marine Corps, that you know what's going on around you at all times.
If people really watched like I do when I'm out somewhere, you could tell by their mannerisms. If they're standing there and they're looking, constantly looking around, looking behind their back, and that they're doing something wrong, or they wouldn't be looking around that much.
Yeah, that's interesting. You bring a lot of life experiences with you from what you've had to deal with. I can't even imagine what prison was like. I've been to a few prisons on visits, but not as a inmate, and I know it's got to be, especially for a 20-year-old kid, it's got to be devastating to be put in that environment.
The worst place I'd ever been in was Cook County Jail in Chicago. It was a hellhole. If you didn't know how to fight, you didn't eat. And I wasn't back then. I was not. You know, you remember how skinny I was.
Yeah, you were what are you 120 pounds and 6'2" or something like that?
6 foot, about 6'1", and that's about 135 pounds, soaking
Yeah.
wet.
And you had your afro was about a third of that. You had an
Yeah.
afro that was the best afro in Gary, Indiana.
And
You look,
everybody wanted to know, like when my parents would come visit, when I get back to the dorm or that, they go, who was that to come to see you? I said, that's my mom and dad. What? Because my mom was Italian, but she was light skinned Italian, you know? And my biological father was Irish, and Indian. My grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee, and I always had the olive color skin and the curly hair. My dad had coal black curly hair to the day he died.
Well, you sure you had a champion afro. In fact, when you showed me that picture, which I got a picture of, that was your trademark signature look. That's how
I couldn't
everybody knew
hide.
you
I
by
couldn't
that
hide
afro.
from I couldn't hide behind a telephone pole. I'll tell you that.
That's true. It was huge. All
That's
right,
why.
Neil.
That's why one of the narcotics officers in Gary, Lou Zervis was his name. He said, "Neil, we can see you. You hide behind the pole, but we see the hair sticking out."
Oh, those were the days, Neil. Well, listen, I'm going to wrap this up. I
All
just want
right.
to say one more thing for the listeners out there. If you're interested in a story about Neil and some of my activities as a police officer, picked up a copy of my book, A Badge Well Worn, on Amazon. It's still available. And it's got a 5-star rating on Amazon. And I think Neil even liked it, didn't you, Neil?
Yes, I did.
Gave it to a few of your friends to check out, police
Yep.
officers. They thought it was a great book. So plug for myself on that. But I appreciate you coming over and joining our little podcast here, Neil. And maybe we'll get together again. We'll come up with some new ideas on some things we want to talk about.
All right. Sounds good to me.
We'll leave it there.
Have a good one.
All right. Thanks.